And apologize for being out, but Rosie the Riveter showed up at the Capitol, and I wanted to say hi to 4 of them from my district. Interesting issue because it does affect all of us. And my district in southeast, south central Michigan has tremendous challenges there, and appreciate the efforts that all of you have shown toward this issue. Mr. Million, how long has the DEA been aware of the increased prevalence of fentanyl-laced drugs, and how are you responding to this problem specifically?
Thank you for the question. We've been aware of fentanyl going back a number of years, and we've seen its increasing use and seeing it flood the country. What are we doing? We're doing basically what we do with all our criminal investigations. We look to target the worst of the worst criminal trafficking organizations, identify them, infiltrate them, indict them, capture, convict them. And we're trying to educate, certainly, our state and locals about the risks associated with fentanyl. It's a multi-pronged approach, and it's definitely something we're concerned about. We're certainly concerned about the unsuspecting users that are being exposed to it when it's combined with heroin, or when it's put into a replica, an exact replica of an opioid pill.
Are those the special enforcement challenges that you have, or are there others beyond that?
There's a whole panoply of different challenges, and that's certainly one of them. It also poses a risk to my law enforcement brothers and sisters that encounter increasingly fentanyl on an enforcement operation, and it, as you know, it can be inhaled, it can be absorbed through your skin with tragic consequences. So it certainly is a major problem for us, for users, for the country, and then also for law enforcement.
What has the DEA learned about the source of fentanyl when it appears in heroin?
2 primary sources. The majority of it's coming up from Mexico with precursors and actual fentanyl shipped from China, from Asia, into Mexico for production, and then across the southwest border all over the country, particularly up in the northeast, but also directly from China. So those are the 2 primary threats.
It's my understanding that Mexico has been a primary source. Is that true?
That is true.
How are you working to decrease this trafficking? Any additional efforts that you can talk about in regards to what's coming across the border?
We have a great relationship. It's one of our, if not our largest office in Mexico. We've got a great relationship with the counterparts. We continue to work with them on those trafficking organizations. The Sinaloa cartel is probably the most powerful cartel down there. It's got a tremendous distribution network spread across the country. They're capitalizing on the prescription opioid abuse epidemic. They're flooding the country with heroin, but they're also now flooding it with fentanyl. So we're just going to continue an aggressive approach from the law enforcement side and do what we do with our state and local counterparts every day.
Okay. Mr. Botticelli, what efforts is the U.S. engaging in to work with governments where heroin is produced to cut off the supply? And then secondly, does this involve identifying labs in countries like Mexico, which may be a trafficking bonanza of heroin and fentanyl in the United States, and what are the biggest barriers to stopping that?
You know, as we've looked at this issue, particularly heroin and fentanyl, you know, having an aggressive approach that reduces the supply is particularly important to do that. I actually was just in Mexico a few weeks ago, meeting with the Attorney General and high-level folks in the government, calling for enhanced action, particularly as it relates to heroin, looking at enhanced eradication efforts, looking at how we go after both heroin and fentanyl labs, and how we continue to support mutual collaboration on going after the organizations that deal with it. We've also been working with the DEA and our high-intensity drug trafficking areas domestically to look at reducing and going after those organizations that are trafficking heroin and fentanyl domestically. It's really, I think, important for us to have this holistic approach and to really focus on a robust law enforcement response to reduce the availability of heroin and fentanyl. You know, we have to really look at how we work with our Customs and Border Protection folks to increase the detection of both heroin and fentanyl. And I think, you know, to Mr. Milione's point, we have to look at our international work with China that often produces these precursor chemicals as it relates to particularly fentanyl production. We were actually just pleased that China just moved to schedule over 130 new substances, including one of the precursors from acetylfentanyl. So, it really is important for us to work with our international partners, particularly China, Mexico, and working with with our domestic law enforcement folks.
Thank you. I yield back.
Back to the gentleman.